Welcome to this week's episode of 20 Minute Tims. I'm your host Jamie. I'm joined by Melly.
Yes.
And Stephen.
Hello.
This weekend we saw something new. We saw angry Brendan Martinelli. Do you think he had a right to be angry?
Yeah, definitely. I'd have loved to have seen him at half time, having players by the throat up against the wall and it. That'd been brilliant to see. But warranted at half time. It was one of the worst first half performances I've seen from Celtic. Some terrible performances, and glad he got the reaction he wanted.
Yeah, it was refreshing actually to see him so. It was seething after the game, absolutely furious, and I liked that he did that. Not because I want to turn it into a player versus manager versus fans thing. It's because I think that it vindicated somewhat all of the feelings that we've been having about various parts of this season, about how just sort of underwhelming it's been at times, and there it all just bubbled to the surface. But Brendan Rodgers is absolutely furious with the standard of the performances going in. I don't think that came out of nowhere. I don't think it was like, well, we've been so good up until this point and that half was a one-off. I think it's been, I can only speculate, of course, just from my perspective watching these games. I reckon it's got to a point where he's just absolutely had enough.
Well, I'd agree with you because even though he was angry at half time, he had a choice, didn't he? He didn't have to come out and tell us he was angry at half time. He could have just kept it all in house, but he decided, Melly, that it was something that was worth publicising.
No, and look, that Sky, he done Clyde One, he done a number of interviews and he said the exact same thing and always started with the exact same thing. So he wanted the message out there. He's been very, very clear in his messages this week, Brendan Rodgers, over the last week or so. Very, very clear. I've enjoyed all his press conferences because you feel as a fan sometimes, are we been taken for mugs here or what? And he's coming out and basically backing up what we're thinking and how we feel, that it's not been good enough, and that whether it be in the boardroom, the recruitment and on the pitch, it's not been good enough all round, and we're starting to see that now. I don't know. I think he's long enough back in the job now that he's done the bit with the players where he said, oh, look, they've been brilliant for me and all that. He's taken a different approach this time and he got the reaction. Look, can he disagree with anything he's saying, to be honest?
He's been very direct recently. I mean, it's a massive month of football, massive 2 months. The month of December, huge games culminating in a Glasgow derby. Then we've got the January transfer window. It's 2 important months for Celtic. And by the way, we've got lots of great content on patreon.com/20minutetim. Snuck that one in there, but you can check that out. We're going to have, obviously, match coverage of all the games coming up. We're going to have scouting done. We're going to have extra content from Alex Barker, the Euro expert, bringing us some little key positions that Celtic might be able to improve on, and we're going to be discussing some certain signing options with him. We've got some really good content, and we're also going to look back at January transfer business in the past, see how well that's panned out for both Celtic and Brendan. So patreon.com/20minutetims if you want involved. But Stephen, he's been very clear recently, hasn't he? First on the transfers about needing quality in, and after the Champions League exit, he didn't shy away from any microphones at that point. And then after the game there at St Johnstone, he was very, very clear. Simply not good enough. And as Melly said, it echoes what a lot of fans have thought.
Well, he hasn't specifically, quite literally said the players aren't good enough, but all of the parts amount to that. Like, we need quality and the performances aren't good enough. What does that mean? It means my players aren't good enough. Now, I had started to wonder here if the big bad board, because that's been the focus ever since that comical AGM a few weeks ago, right? The board have been in sharp focus. I had started to wonder that, right, that's there, right? That is a problem, but it's kind of becoming a distraction for the fact that these games aren't good enough. And I feel comfortable saying that now that Brendan Rodgers has come out and said it's not good enough, because in my mind there's a big difference between dropping points, and that's firmly what I think we will start to do if we keep playing like this. So that's why I'm worried about it. When we're putting in first half performances like that inevitably leads to drop points, if not defeats. And there's a big difference between dropping points out of nowhere, which again will happen. I'm not saying we've got any God-given right to win every single game, but remember last season when Celtic lost to St Mirren? We thought, where did that come from? And the longer the weeks went on, when Celtic were winning game after game after game, we looked back on that and thought, well, that was just a complete anomaly, right? That just happened. Who knows what happened on the day? It was a disaster. But there's a big difference between dropping points in that manner and dropping points when you can see it coming a mile off, based on the performances that are on the field. So that first half alarmed me, to be honest. Now, it's great. It was a great win to get, and the performance in the second half was significantly better. Like the cliche, a game of two halves, as you say. I mean, it exists for a reason, but never has there been a more stark difference between two halves that I can remember. But I was worried about that first half because I thought we are going absolutely nowhere. And when Celtic equalised, I thought, right, we're fine. I think we'll go on and win this game. But the first half was an inexplicable, just a shocking performance from a Celtic team. And look, I don't want to be entitled, and people will say, it's only one game and all that. But to my mind, there's a minimum standard here. There's a minimum standard at a club like Celtic, and that didn't meet it. And the manager came out and told us that.
Look, you get a free pass, as far as I'm concerned. If Brendan Rodgers is coming out saying it's no good enough for me, it's no good enough to be a Celtic player, then I don't think really anybody's got a leg to stand on when they want to disagree with that. But Melly, what is it you think that Brendan saw in the game that upset him so much or made him so angry?
It was passive and it was slow, and I always get my back up when people say this because I feel it's just, not all the time, but a lot of it's just Brendan Rodgers last season, Celtic were slow, this is what we've got again. But every time he comes out and he says they weren't quick enough, and the players aren't doing it. We're seeing too many players take the easy option, not try and make things happen, and that's not good enough at Celtic because we know that teams will sit in and we know that teams will make it difficult for us. So many players like Yang, one of the worst halves of football I've ever seen from a player. And then I think that sums it up because while Yang was disgraceful, to be honest, and I don't mean that, but I do mean that because I felt sorry for Yang in recent weeks because things haven't been going for him. And in the first couple of minutes, the ball goes over to him in the right, and the ball goes under his foot and out, and like that can happen to him. They maybe get a bit of low confidence, but see if you're having a bad game, make sure the guy you're up against is having a terrible game as well. But didn't do that, didn't make runs, didn't do anything, caught offside a number of times out of sheer laziness. I can't describe it other than anything else because I had a front row viewing of it. I was in the left-hand side of the stand, right in front of him, and he was just standing offside, not getting back in. But that sort of summed it up. There was players like that just not giving 100%. And as Celtic fans, I hate the fact that we love guys like Johnny Hayes because he gave 100%, because that is the bare minimum you should get being a Celtic player, is you give 100%, and everything else after that, the technique and all that comes into it, but you must give 100%. And so many of them, like Yang, Greg Taylor, David Turnbull, you could have subbed a number of players and it wouldn't have made a difference. It was so poor.
I think Melly's onto something when he says taking the easy way out. Brendan Rodgers says a couple of the players thought they were in for an easy afternoon. And I thought this in some Champions League games, and we'll touch on that, but I've seen it now leach into the run-of-the-mill domestic stuff, and it's taking the ball and just passing it to the nearest guy to you. Now, you want to see Celtic be brave and ambitious and aggressive on the ball. You want to see players trying to make stuff happen, but some of that first half was played at walking pace. Now, we're going to obviously talk about the second half because some of it was night and day. It was much better in the second half. But I could really see watching the game as a fan, you could see yourself, this isn't right, this isn't working. As Melly says, too passive. Nobody getting on the ball, dictating, making things happen. The Yang performance, I'm with Melly. That was, people don't like it on social media. We put a tweet out, or I put a tweet out, hands up, it was me, going, is Yang one of the worst players I've ever seen? I don't know, but he's verging towards that with performances like this. That wasn't me saying Yang is definitely the worst Celtic player I've ever seen, but it has been so long since I remember such an error-strewn performance from a player that couldn't pass it, couldn't cross it, drifting offside, standing offside. The guy was having an absolute nightmare out there. And if you're Brendan Rodgers standing in the sideline, you know, the only concession I will give Yang is he's playing probably out of pure necessity at the moment because the guys who would start that, both in Maeda and Abada, are both injured. So he's found himself in there. But there was no real excuse for that. I mean, he's a professional footballer at Celtic. You need to be turning in a much better performance like that, and it was the repeated errors that really got my back up from Yang.
I don't know if I could use the word necessity about Yang because two guys who came off the bench, one in MIKEY Johnstone, who changed the game quite significantly. He contributed quite a lot to changing the game in Celtic's favour, and James Forrest came off the bench and scored. Can't really ask for much more than that. Yang has been preferred to both of those guys. Either of those guys could play in Yang's position.
Why do you think that is?
I've no idea. I've been thinking about it a lot. I don't know what the justification for playing Yang at the moment is. And again, I feel that excessively having a go at a younger player feels a bit crap, from a fan. I know it does, but
you're right, because and we're all willing him to do well.
Oh, yeah.
He's had nothing. See, to be honest, he's had a lot of praise on the podcast, has Yang, but I was...
You in particular.
I guess I was excited by him, and I was encouraged, and I was really, really like the fact that he seems to be a good dribbler. He seems to have a trick in him. He seems to want to go and go and go again. But that performance, I was just like... John Joe Kenny. It was up there with John Joe Kenny stuff. It was up there with Amido Balde type stuff, and I'm just like...
Keep going.
It was like George Weah's cousin and stuff. I was like, this guy's just... He's no got it. He's no got it this afternoon. And in the context of the whole performance, as Melly said, he listed a number of players. It was shocking to see a Celtic team perform that badly, and I thought out of everyone that performed badly, he was the worst.
Yeah, and
just take your medicine, Yang. But that's
yeah. And where I was going with that about judging players and feeling like we're unnecessarily piling in on a younger player. He's played 18 games now. Now, I know he hasn't started all of them, but 18 is quite a lot to be able to make your mind up about what type of player someone is currently and is likely to be. I don't think it's enough evidence to make a lasting judgment about writing the guy off completely, but it's definitely enough to build a picture in your head about what the guy is likely to be going forward, and he's absolutely miles off it just now. That was so far away from the standard required. It's incredible, and that's not to say he has been terrible in all of those 18 games. That's simply untrue. He was very, very good in the first half against Aberdeen. Extremely good. Bordering on man of the match. Had Palma not taken over in the second half and set up several goals, I think he was in for man of the match and one of the best performances of the season as a team, that is. But that was absolutely miles off it. And he might get better. I can't really think of many examples off the top of my head of players who have looked that far off it and then went on to become proper Celtic players. I'm sure there are examples.
So if I was to play Yang's advocate here, right?
Right.
If Abada and Maeda were both fit, right, Yang wouldn't be playing as much. So he wouldn't be making these mistakes in first team Celtic games. He'd be making them in training, or he'd be making them in B team games where we don't get to see him. That is a defence that you could put forward for Yang. Nobody's put forward for him yet, but he's making all these mistakes in the full glare of the demands of the Celtic first team. Would be one defence. Yeah,
and I know everybody's bored about hearing about the transfer window, but see, ultimately these players, right? Palma aside, who plays now virtually every game, I think he'll start the vast majority of the games. Yang is basically the second most high-profile signing we've made this summer. Who else? Home has played a handful of games maximum. Bernardo in and out. So Yang is the second most prolifically chosen player in the Celtic team, so we have to make some sort of judgment on him. I don't mean final, but I think we're within our rights to judge how he's playing. It just seems like, again, he might get better, but he seems like he's the wrong guy. He's in the wrong team at the wrong time. I know that he would be playing less in ideal circumstances, but again, he's been brought to Celtic as a part of the first team squad, expected to contribute. Other guys are coming in and doing something when they come in, but it just seems like he's a guy in the wrong movie. But Celtic are trying to remake Goodfellas, but they've cast James Corden instead of the Joe Pesci rather. So,
oh my God, that sounds terrible. Well, whose fault do you think it is that Mikey Johnston's not playing then? Because Stephen's right, he came on, he changed the game. I thought he was positive, I thought he was direct. Brendan Rodgers had a bit of a say on it at the end of the game, saying, look, Mikey Johnston needs to work on his tactical side and he needs to work on his defensive side, but we know what he's got there. And we've kind of written Mikey Johnston off, but I think the reason we've written Mikey Johnston off is because the length of time he's been at the club. He's been at Celtic a long, long time now. No manager since maybe 2019, 2020 type time. No manager's really fancied him. He was in the team then he'd not been in the team ever since. So you kind of look at Mikey Johnston as a Celtic figure of time gone by, as if his Celtic career's kind of passed him by, but he's at the club, he's got a contract, he was sent on loan, he came back. Ange was asked about Mikey Johnston, and he said something along the lines of, we all know what Mikey's capable of, it's up to him now. So that's two managers that have been kind of slightly publicly critical about him, and I'm beginning to think or wonder, Melly, is it Mikey Johnston's fault that he's not playing in these games ahead of Yang? It's not just a case of the manager fancies Yang and thinks he's brilliant. Maybe Mikey Johnston's no doing the things that he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and MD right now that's not playing in this Celtic first 11, it's got to be their own fault. It's much like the Summers, the same positions we highlighted. Left back, first off, we need a left back in there. Probably a goalkeeper as well, but things have changed since the summer as well, because we're a bit depleted. But
we're going to end up needing centre halves at this rate as well, even though we've got about 7 in the squad. None of them can make it in. Well, Phillips is away in January.
Brendan likes him. Said today in the press conference he's been impressive since he came in.
But he's away. So we've got Carter Vickers and Scales, a guy who wouldn't have been anywhere near the squad in seasons gone by, and that's all we've got.
I'm telling you right now, we're extending that loan. There's no way Brendan Rodgers is coming out.
I hope so.
There's no way Brendan Rodgers is coming out 3 weeks or so before the January window opens going, I'm really impressed with this. One of the only players he's been impressed with has arrived in the summer.
He's played about 100 minutes.
Really impressed with Phillips. He's been great attitude, very professional, blah, blah, blah. 3 weeks later, we had to send him back. We had to let him go in the end. He was rubbish. we can't have that. Anyway, Melly.
He's barely played either, has he? But definitely left back. I think goalkeeper might need a dress, but we need a wide player, man. We need a wide player that can take players on, and we needed that.
About 7 of those as well.
We needed that in the summer. We get 3 of them, and none of them play. I think Palmer's the only signing. Genuinely, if we only sign Palmer in the summer, we'd be no worse off than we are right now. But so we need a left back, we need a winger definitely, and we need probably a midfielder with a bit of guile, somebody that can make a pass, and a keeper. But it changes every game for me now. But definite left back. I thought Taylor was unacceptable. We need a winger as well, somebody that can take somebody on.
As well as the changes that Melly suggested, Stephen, I would like to see Celtic take less touches in the ball. I'd like to see far more running off the ball. I think we're far too static at times where we just sort of take the ball, hold on to it for too long, pass it out left, that person holds on to it too long, comes back in. It's not so much what we're doing that's annoying me so much at the moment. Annoying me, I think. It's not so much what we're doing that I've got a problem with. I think what we're doing is right. The approach to the games are right, but we're just not quick enough in what we're doing. And I think that speed really needs to pick up. And I know to do that you need quality, and I know quality brings confidence, and I know quality challenges and pushes the other players along.
Competition is the best coach,
sometimes, as Brendan said.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all plugs into one thing or the other. But I want to see us move the ball a lot quicker. I want to see more running off the ball. I just want to see Celtic be a bit more dynamic, less static. And I really, really, really want to see us be more aggressive, particularly at set pieces.
I know. Well, yeah, Melly has listed some players and personnel and positions he'd like to see changed. You've just said like an overall change in attitude.
Yeah, tactical tweaks.
And that is something that came up time and again since Brendan Rodgers has analysed that game. He spoke of mentality, and that's something that needs to change clearly.
Soft.
Yeah, correct. So Brendan Rodgers, thankfully, on a rare occasion, recording this podcast, we don't actually have to speculate on what the problems might be, because Brendan Rodgers came out and told us. He was using words like soft, using terms like wanted it easy and stuff like
passive.
that. Yeah, passive. Remarkable
it's
stuff.
Criticisms for for a manager to come out and call his team soft, say you guys wanted it easy, say they were far too passive, say it's really Brendan's usually quite reserved.
Yeah. And look, this could be a one-off, but I don't think it's hysterical. I don't think it's excessive to say that this has been coming. As I said earlier, the performances have been trending in this direction, and it just came to a head in the first half at St Johnstone. Now, thankfully, they fixed it. So what we need is a complete rewriting, a complete culture change at the club to ensure that doesn't happen again, because that's not something we're used to. I don't personally know where it's come from, because that didn't exist last season. As I say, we dropped points, but it wasn't because there was an overall lethargy. There wasn't like a malaise around the club. We just dropped points out of nowhere and then lost a couple of games after the league was already won.
See, I wonder if it is endemic within the squad. I don't think it is. I'll sort of disagree with you there a wee bit, because I think Brendan even said the players have been good all season, but that just crept in. And I think it always comes back to, as Melly says and as Brendan says, the quality in the squad is, I think if you're guaranteed to play every week, that's not really going to you're no determined, you're no needing to do your best. And if we look at centre half position, Liam Scales has put in some of the performances of his career, probably because he knows fine well he's got guys breathing down his neck to get in front of him. We've got Naropsky that we paid $5 million for, we've got Stephen Welsh who'll be choking to get in the Celtic team, we've got Phillips, so Scales at the back knows he...
Did mention Lagerbielke?
Well, I think it would have been a stretch to mention Lagerbielke, but you're right, but I didn't forget about him. But I think so that's why we're seeing such good performances out of Scales. But about the pitch, there's no real competition. And the Yang thing is interesting. Melly says he wants a winger that can beat someone. We've got one in MIKEY Johnstone. But what does he have to do to get into the Celtic team?
Well, again, that has been made clear to him. The fact that he isn't tactically aware enough, isn't tactically disciplined enough, and the fact that he doesn't get involved in the press, which is an essential part of being a winger. It's no 1995. We can't have wingers who just take players on and then they just shut off. They just switch off and then other players take over. Our wingers are effectively the first line of defence. I know that's kind of a cliche and very obvious to say, but even more so in modern football, that's Dyson Maida's primary function really in the team, isn't it? It's not because he's busting with like impeccable world-class quality in front of goal or he's crossing or anything like that. It's because that's what he brings. Mikey Johnstone is potentially the opposite. I wouldn't use words like world-class and all that, but in terms of their player profile, they are complete opposites, even though they are ostensibly the same thing and they're both wingers. So he needs to somehow find that. I don't like to use terms like add that to his game because that's very easy said.
Another cliche.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Yeah, so players talk about that all the time, or even we talk about stuff like that. If you can only add passing to his game, add 20 goals a season to his game, as if you can just basically turn that on. So I don't know where Mikey Johnstone is going to get this from at 24 years old, because he's not a young player anymore. He's a relatively experienced player, maybe not in terms of minutes played, miles on the clock. I don't
minutes
think
in the legs.
Yes, minutes in the legs. That's another one. But he's been around a top club for a very, very long time, and for that to still be a criticism of his game is suboptimal. To be honest, it's not particularly. It doesn't bode well for his career. Now he was good at the weekend in the second half and changed the game, but it's very easy to, after a game like that, look at the first half and how terrible it was, look at the second half and how good that was, and say that that's the answer to the first half. So just all we need to do is put in guys like James Forrest and Mikey Johnstone and things will be okay. But they've been there the whole time, and this season has been the way it has been.
To be fair to Mikey, I thought he was man of the match. I think Callum McGregor got it. It was a bit of a curious one to me. I thought Mikey Johnstone changed the game when he came on, and I want to see more of that from Mikey Johnstone. That in many ways, as a fan, that's the infuriating bit, because you see him come on, you see him, the tricks, you see what he can offer the team, you can see he can turn a game, and you think to yourself, why are you sitting on the bench?
Yeah, and that's the thing with Mikey Johnstone, along with all the other signings we've made this summer, isn't it? They were all playing football before they came to Celtic, and now they come to Celtic and it's, they're playing too early. No, they're not. They're first team players, they should be playing. And Mikey Johnstone has absolutely no excuses here, because he knows what it takes to play at Celtic. He's went away, got himself game time, and he's back. Probably didn't expect to play, but this is the chance. This is the chance you didn't think you were going to get. So take it. And look, yesterday I thought he was great when he came on. I think he's been like that in most of the games he's came on, but it just doesn't work out for him. You can tell, especially games at Celtic Park, as soon as it doesn't go right for him, the crowd, you hear the groan, because why is Mikey Johnstone playing at Celtic? Not his fault at this point, but he's just got to do that. And I think maybe he needs a goal, but it's got to the point where that looks so far away. He just needs to do something good for the fans, and the flick for the first goal, the second goal, maybe that's what does it for him, and people see, look, he's putting in the effort. I don't think it's, for a guy that's not played football for Celtic in so long, he doesn't lack confidence. As soon as he gets the ball, he goes at players. It doesn't always work out for him, but I want to see that. And if he loses it, he'll go again. He just maybe needs something to work out for him. And hopefully this sort of assisting he sort of got will be that wee confidence booster for him. Because now most people are saying, I want him to play on Wednesday night. Hopefully he can do that, and hopefully he can put in a performance then and maybe kick on. But he's not going to kick on, is he? We've seen this movie so many times, but unfortunately this is where we are at Celtic. So Mikey Johnstone, along with the other guys, no excuses. Take your chance right now, or this is it, because we will bring in other players. Celtic do need these players to take their chances, because, as I said, the fixtures are coming thick and fast, and we've got a massive game against Rangers at the end of the month. But was there anything else you want to discuss that first half, or can we leave that in the annals of history, Stephen, and maybe talk about the goals? Goal, man. So Johnston's goal.
Okay, there's fine. That. But I was thinking there about Mikey Johnstone and guys like Greg Taylor and all that. Have they just been here too long? Are they part of are they a symptom of a wider problem in that there's a wee bit too much familiarity
Celtic's
with these
addiction
guys?
To continuity.
Yeah, I think you've spoken about this recently, and I think Greg Taylor's been really good for Celtic. I don't want to dismiss all that. He was excellent in winning a treble last season, but it just feels like it's gotten to a point where the position is now stale. I think he has no competition whatsoever. That's not his fault, but I think you're right in identifying that there is a level of complacency that was displayed in that first half against St Johnstone, and that there's too many guys there that have no competition for their places and have maybe just got to that point where it's thanks very much, thanks for the memories, but maybe time to move on and develop and evolve past having the same players in the same positions for year after year after year. That doesn't really work in modern football.
People get very sensitive about this sort of thing. But just because a footballer has been a really good servant for you and a really good player at one time, I think everyone broadly accepts that comes to an end at a point. Or sometimes managers want to play a different way, something changes, and that's the end of it, and a player moves on. But it's when you start to discuss that possibilities when people get touchy about it. So we'll sit in this podcast and we'll say, Brendan could probably use another option at left back, maybe someone a bit more dynamic, a bit more forward thinking, a bit more aggressive going forward than Greg Taylor is. Greg Taylor was brilliant under Ange, coming inside, he was revitalised. And people think, well, no, Greg Taylor was brilliant. Why would you want rid of him? Well, the manager's asking him to play in a different way. And I think maybe we have touched on something. The spectrum of talent at Celtic is so big that the first pick from Greg Taylor to the competition doesn't even get in the side half the time. No. And if we look across the pitch, that's the story of Celtic at the moment, really, isn't it? I think we might have discovered something here where everybody that's playing for Celtic right now, there's no competition to push them on, apart from Liam Scales, who's playing out of his skin right now. I can't really think of anyone else who's under serious competition for their place. So hopefully when players come back for fitness and things start to change, and the January window comes in, that'll give Celtic an opportunity to change things. And I think another position where there seems to be no competition and people are starting to tear their hair out is the goalkeeper. And I think Joe Hart coming under a lot of pressure for the way that he reacted to the goal. Personally, I think Matt O'Reilly was more to blame. Melly, he should have been more aggressive, more decisive in trying to clear it. I've noticed recently that teams have got this tactic where they crowd around Joe Hart so he can't come for anything. Then what we do is we put Greg Taylor in between the opposition and Joe Hart, as if Greg Taylor, all 5'4" of him, is supposed to sort of protect Joe Hart against like 3 or 4 opposition players. So it makes it very difficult for Joe Hart to come out and claim anything. In that goal, we were talking about it pre-recording, Joe Hart managed to make a bit of space for himself, but when he jumps to get the ball, he's pushed. And there's nothing you can do when both feet are off the ground.
I don't think it's a foul, because that kind of sound. Yeah, I think that kind of implied that he'd been fouled. What I saw watching it back was that there's a crowd of players and they all move at the one go, and it's actually Greg Taylor that backs into Joe Hart. Joe Hart jumps, Greg Taylor backs into him a wee bit. It gets completely off balance. You can't hold your weight if you're off the ground and someone but nudges into you while you're in midair, because the common thing that people say about keepers is it should just clear them out, but there's no runway, there's no momentum. You can't from a standing start just clear 4 players out from in front of you. I'm not excusing Joe Hart entirely, because I think he has looked weak for a few of these goals recently, but at that point I don't think it's possible to just decide to clear out 4 players.
Because the opposition, they put all the players around Joe Hart, then dump the cross right on top of him, and it causes chaos. Now, worth mentioning, because we complain about referees and VAR and all that, and we're not going down this road this week, but the attacker did have a full grab of Matt O'Reilly's shot in the game, which obviously hindered him in trying to get his clearance off Melly. Yeah,
looking at the goal, I understand where you're coming from, but when you watch it, okay, right, that goal, maybe Joe Hart could have done better, Celtic could have done better on all, but when you think back to the Lazio game and the Motherwell game last week, every corner Celtic conceded, every one of them was an in-swinger into Joe Hart's area. So that tells you people see him and Celtic as a weakness there. So Brendan Rodgers said it was soft. Look, if that had got disallowed for...
Bullied, he used the word bullied, didn't he? Yeah.
If that had been disallowed for Celtic, you'd be fuming. We'd be talking about Super Mario World here, but you could feel it coming, you could sense it coming at the game, because Celtic were so poor, they seem to be easily broke on, and then when the corner gets whipped in, it's no surprise. Celtic have to be better at this. They can't be that soft. They can't do everything like the Motherwell game last week. Motherwell didn't look like scoring, got a corner and scored from it. Again, in this game, St Johnstone, a few decent breaks, got a corner, scored from it. Better teams are going to punish Celtic if it comes to that. Rangers are decent at deliveries and set pieces, so Lazio were firing balls right in on Joe Hart there as well. Celtic have to sort it themselves. We can't be sitting here looking at goalkeepers and that. Celtic are a small team. Do better at your job, man.
Eat, sleep, concede, set piece.
There we go.
Another cliche.
Right, listen, that's the negative stuff of that game out of the way, because at the end of the day, second half, I thought Celtic were brilliant. Lots of penetrating balls from Callum McGregor, late runs from Matt O'Reilly, 3 terrific strikes. What was your favourite goal, Stephen?
Oh, O'Reilly. Definitely. No contest.
I see. That's what your average Joe in the street would choose, right? Basic. The thinking man is the thinking man.
Me, an intellectual, would probably say.
Somebody a bit up here. He's picking Callum McGregor's goal. Melly.
James Forrest doesn't hide ever, does he? Gets us out of jail. I thought Matt O'Reilly's was great because everything about it was quick. The way we moved the ball, the flick from MIKEY Johnstone, even the layoff from Kyogo, it's just bang, touch, and then into O'Reilly, one touch and then smash. It was a great goal, and it was what Celtic deserved. The first goal you could sort of feel coming, and then when Celtic scored, you thought, right, we're going to move on here. Great strike with his right foot. He mentioned about doing Pilates in his press conference today, how it's helping him take on his game.
Pilates instructors in Glasgow, like that Scarface meme just now. Dun, 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 yeah. Money flying through the machine on the phone.
So I think Matt O'Reilly, guys like him,
I don't even actually know what Pilates is, honestly. What is it? Is it like yoga?
Kind of, but it's more kind of like core work and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's one of these things. Oh, Pilates class, and I've just been nodding away. Oh, that's a good idea. No idea what it is. Could be hocus pocus for all I know.
Yeah, we'll all be dead interested in it now. As I say, we'll be all online. Do you end up looking like that? Is that what it gets you?
Take on the Pilates to make me look like that, right, Melly?
It was like a smashing goal from O'Reilly, and it's what Celtic deserved for that second half. But that was it. Everything was quicker. There was less touches, like you're saying. Don't need 4 or 5 touches for everything.
David Turnbull,
Yang and Turnbull going off. I thought Yang could have been Cantwelled very early on, but Turnbull barely got 5 minutes.
Is that what we're calling it now? Anyone that's hooked before half time is officially being called Cantwelled. Okay.
So I think Turnbull could have been the same, but he got a couple of minutes, and looking down the touchline, I can't remember what he'd done early in the second half of Brennan's that right time. Came on, and Celtic could then go a wee bit more, not direct, but he's a bit of a physical presence up there because Kyogo just wasn't getting in the game. And again, I'm not blaming that on Kyogo, I'm blaming that on Celtic.
He had a couple of 2 decent chances. I would have thought he was unlucky not to score at least one of them.
But gives us that different dimension. Kyogo drops deep, and the wee touch for O'Reilly's goal, you can see what Kyogo can do back there. So I think getting that drive on in the second half with Johnstone and really made Celtic better. And I think MIKEY Johnstone coming on also meant Alistair Johnstone had a good game. That's the best half of him we've seen in a long time, and I think it helped having somebody in front of him who was willing to go inside or out, which meant Johnstone could himself go inside or out, because there was a point he gets the ball sort of around the edge of the box and Yang's on his outside, and he just chose, I'm not passing to him. Clipped the ball in. Johnstone was great after that, always making decent runs. He wasn't fearful of getting forward in case Yang lost the ball. So those 2 direct substitutions made Celtic just go at teams, and then it just looked much better.
It's encouraging to know that's in the locker, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean the second half was excellent. I know we've focused a lot on the first half, but that's because Brendan Rodgers came out and absolutely torched it. Now that's kind of the big news of the week about how angry Brendan Rodgers got. But that said, the response was impressive, and Brendan Rodgers again said that as well. He said the problem is if you give them that at halftime, give them the rocket, another cliche, a rocket up the arse at halftime. Yeah, the hairdryer treatment. If you give them that at halftime and they don't respond, that's when the serious problems start creeping in. So the second half was great. IWATA's another one who made a difference when he came on, set up a goal.
I like him, man.
Yeah, I like IWATA as well. If only there was a way of getting him into the team more often, but I don't know what.
I feel bad if you're a footballer and you play sort of central midfield in a defensive style and your agent says they've got Celtic on the phone, honestly don't answer it, because we've signed so many of these guys. And there's Ideguchi's nominated for Japanese Player of the Year over in Japan after being sent on loan. Just this string of, in the last couple of years, not even the last couple of years, last 4 or 5 years, we just seem to sign so many defensive midfielders and we just don't play any of them.
And then meanwhile, Callum McGregor's 30-year-old knees and hips are like, oh, us again. We'll get it. Don't worry. Game number 63 of the season. Okay, we'll get it. Signed all these midfielders that can't get near the team. We'll take care of it. Don't worry.
But I like the look of IWATA as well.
Yeah, I think he's been reasonably impressive since he's been here. And when he came in and scored that goal against Hearts, was that Hearts? We thought, right, well, he's clearly got something to give here. Nothing really ever since. But the fact is, of that second half, everyone who came off the bench to an extent contributed to the game being won, which is a very good win considering where we came from in that dire first half, including James Forrest. I think he took his goal very, very well as well. Callum McGregor, that's so typically Callum McGregor finished that. They kind of no backlift, just cracking straight through the middle of the ball.
Connoisseur's choice.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, the second half was great, and it was nice to see after such a. Again, I wouldn't use the word boring about the first half because I wasn't bored
No,
at all. I was furious about the first half and actually quite worried at times. So I wasn't bored. I'll give them that. It certainly wasn't a boring performance, but yeah, the second half was worlds apart.
There's been a lot of players that have played for Celtic this season, and you think that was your chance, take it. But IWATA's the one who's looked good in games, but he's not been given a chance. And look, there's been a lot of calls recently for move McGregor one forward, and while I wasn't quite on board with it, I think I would be now. I think a midfield of IWATA with McGregor and O'Reilly could be good, because Cal McGregor was poor in that first half. He's dropping far too deep and taking the balls off defenders. It's why I kind of want somebody else to play instead of Liam Scales, because he's just too slow and his passing's just not crisp enough. Cal McGregor's dropping very deep, which means everything slows down. But I think if you had IWATA in there, it gives Celtic that bit of power we might need, and then moves Cal McGregor forward, because I love seeing him score goals like that. I absolutely love it. I think he could do it, and I think IWATA, McGregor and O'Reilly might have a decent balance. Where it happens or not, I don't know, but I just feel IWATA's that one guy who's not had a chance, where Holm, Bernardo, Turnbull all had multiple chances and they've not taken it. And I think Cal McGregor may be moving forward a bit. I think he could do a bit of damage in the final third as well.
Look, you want this sort of rocket. You don't just want it to be a one game thing. You want this to carry on. You want this to be carefully planned, carefully managed by Brendan, knowing that we've got a lot of difficult games coming up. So I think the most important thing is looking forward to the Hibs game. You want to see this continued.
From the start?
Yeah, from the start. And you want to see the changes from the manager as well. For example, it's not a witch hunt, but I don't want to see Yang start. I want to see maybe MIKEY Johnstone or, God forbid, James Forrest. But I just don't want to see Yang start. Someone else has to play on that side.
It's got to be MIKEY Johnstone, hasn't it?
Yeah,
After
it has
that
to be. I think it has to be.
Yeah.
The only reason I was sort of questioning it there was because MIKEY Johnstone typically plays on the left. So there might be a bit of a chop and a change there. But you just want to see the changes both in performance and some changes in personnel. And you want to see propelling at these fixtures, because we're a couple of weeks out for the Rangers game now. But if things are going the way they're going and we're sort of itchy-peachy, we've built up this little lead and we're dropping points, then they drop points. We win, they win. Tick, tick, tick to the Rangers game. That game comes into sharp focus, and beating them and extending that lead even further into the new year is massive. Is going to be massive for us, so we cannot afford any slip-ups in terms of performance or result.
Yeah, well, the message has been delivered now, hasn't it? Yeah. I think if there was any just lingering complacency or laziness or softness or anything creeping into this team, and I think we all agree that has been, and Brendan Rodgers has identified it and brought it to the public knowledge. I'm not happy with the standard of that performance, and used words like bullied and soft and all that. The message has been delivered loud and clear to multiple sources all at the same time, opening every single one of them with "I've never been so angry."
Yes.
Right? So loud and clear, he has delivered that message, not only to the players but to us. So we are now aware of it. We're going to be watching these games thinking, right, well, that better not happen again, and I don't expect it to, because
it's a risky play from Brendan, though, isn't it? In that respect, as you said, if because not to repeat it, but people might wonder why we're focusing so much on it. Is because he said it to Sky, he said it to Celtic TV, he said it to the written press, and he said it to the press crowd on the radio after the game and the BBC. So he said it to everybody that was willing to listen about how angry he was. But it is a risky game, because if Celtic revert to type in the next game, in the Hibs game, and I'm not saying they will, then Brendan Rodgers needs to go to the board and go, half of these need to go in January. Immediately, don't pass go, don't collect £200. I want them out. Get them out, Sharon. It's me or them, and bring me in some decent players.
Aye, but there's only one winner there, isn't it? Because it's Brendan Rodgers. Because it's from the start of this season where Brendan Rodgers came back, you think a lot of people were a bit sceptical of him coming back. But then you say, right, okay, he's back. We can sort of deal with that. You expected the big things to happen. It didn't happen. And again, the focus went from Brendan Rodgers to the board. They haven't delivered. His signings have the signings, I'm not going to put them his, have barely played. Every time he's in front of a mic now, he's talking about quality. I know we're going to come on to the Lazio game, but it just showed Celtic up for what they are right now. An absolutely pathetic club right now. It was so poor, and the manager's come out and said that, and now he's called out the players. So if we get to January and Celtic don't make 3-4 signings that come into the first team, he'd be well within his rights to go at the end of the season. Look, this isn't working.
Look, I know what you're saying, but I would be amazed. I mean, Brendan Rodgers, I think the most damning thing, I'm keen to go into the Champions League stuff, and some of this will meld in, but I think the most damning thing Brendan Rodgers said all week, not that angry, not about the performance, not about players being soft, but when he said, I wanted before I arrived at the club, I thought we needed 4 players before we lost any. I still think we need 4 players, and that's basically the manager writing off almost every signing that came in the summer, more or less.
Yeah.
And And that doesn't include the likes of losing Jota. That's a massive ask of the board. And I think I get it, but I just don't see it happening in January. I don't see 4 true bits of quality coming in January. If we get one, if we get a right winger or a left back, I'll be happy in January.
That's unacceptable. It can't happen for 2 windows. We cannot bring in 9 players and one of them to be a first team player and then get into January. The manager tells you exactly what he needs, and you can't find a player better than Greg Taylor despite having a year to do it. You can't find a player better than Yang despite having 6 months to do it. What is going on there if Celtic cannot find better players?
Well, the only thing I would say to sort of fight Celtic's corner a wee bit on here is, I think without using manager speak, January is, I mean, we are going to do a podcast, we're going to look back at January transfer windows, but typically January is a difficult time to do business because a lot of top players, Stephen, want to wait until summer and see what their options are.
Yeah, and a lot of clubs will not. If we're out there wanting proven, genuine quality, the word quality keeps getting used here. If you want that in January, who wants to lose that in January?
Correct.
Depending on if they're going for titles, if they're fighting against relegation in the second half of the season, nobody wants to lose their best players, and that's exactly the players that Celtic want. So we want quality. Nobody wants to lose it.
I kind of agree with you, and I understand where you're coming from, but I just feel this is the crap we were fed over the years about, we can't buy players till we get in the Champions League. January's difficult for us. Ange blew all of that out of the water. He came in, didn't get the players he wanted, called out the board. Before the 1st of January, we'd signed 3 players in his first season. If you talk about, we don't need proven quality, we need good players. Matt O'Reilly wasn't proven quality, came in and he's been a Celtic first team player since. Good players are out there if you do the correct scouting, have the due diligence. Killing my own point here. And if the manager tells you exactly what he needs, Ange Postecoglou came in and said, I need guys to fit into this system. Celtic went out and done it, and it worked out well.
Look, I agree
Brendan
with you.
will do the same.
I agree with you, and I agree with everything you've said, but just past experience tells me that I would be amazed if it happened. I do agree, but I would be amazed.
What are we basing it on? What are we basing on this faith that everything can fix in January on it?
I feel like I've been a Celtic supporter so many times going January window, 2 or 3 bits of quality, that's all we need.
Completely wasted 4 months in the summer. Yeah. It's doing absolutely nothing. Get rid of the Jota, brought in Palma. The rest you can completely forget. The rest is nothing. Here's a final thing on, or for me, on why this I agree, is a risky manoeuvre from Rodgers, because we all enjoyed it. We thought it was a refreshing take on what's happening with Celtic, and Rodgers coming out and basically flaming the attitude of the players. There will be a lot of people out there and watching this and listening to this thinking, aye, okay, but what's your part in this, Brendan? What's your shit? Because this is a treble winning team, and okay, we lost Jota, we lost Aaron Moy, lost Starfelt. It can't all be them. Why is the quality dipped off so much since you came to the club? Personally speaking, Brendan Rodgers has enough cachet, enough political capital with me as a fan to give him the benefit of the doubt and think, right, well, okay, you've identified the problem, you've told us exactly what the problem is, so I then trust him to go and fix it. That said, he can't be blameless in this, because we've got good players there. We've got very good players who romped to a treble last season. Yes, I use that word, romped, thanks to the sun. But they strode to a treble last season, and now all of them to a man are playing in a less, they're not as good as they were last season, effectively.
Well, I agree with you there, that's fine. Like, we lost Jota, Moy, Starfelt, 3 guys that would play, or one would come on every week. Yeah. But then you take out Abada, then you take out Hatate, then you take out Maeda.
Hatate's been rubbish this season, though.
I know, but he still would be playing in this team, even though the players under him aren't playing well enough.
That also supports my point, though, because when Hatate has been in the team, he's been less than he was last season. So,
but then you take him out and the team is less again.
Yeah, but I suppose that ultimately I'm just trying to represent an alternative point of view that will be out there about how, well, man, you're the manager.
Well, you can put a button on it by saying this. When Brendan Rodgers came to the club, the thing he was most impressed about was the transfers.
Yeah.
Remember that? I'm so impressed about the transfers we put in place. The scouting's there. Mark Law's doing a brilliant job. Lots changed since I've been arrived. That was in August. September, October, November, December. That's right, isn't it, Stephen?
Yep.
Fast forward 4 months, and he's like, transfers are crap. So there is one eye on Brendan, because before he was crowing about how good the transfer system was, how much of a great job Matt Law's done, how impressed he was with everything. And then he's like, forget everything I said about transfers. I need 4 guys in then, and I need 4 guys in now. Listen.
Do you think if we had a lesser manager than Brendan, we'd have the wins we've got so far this season?
No, I don't think so for a minute. I don't think Brendan's doing a bad job, but I'm just saying, I have noticed that, you know, he's sort of changed his tune a wee bit on that. Look, the Champions League for Celtic, it seems so far away now that we're discussing the Champions League. It seems so far away, and it's like most people have forgotten and moved on about it, and most people can't be asked. But the Feyenoord game,
forgotten or trying to black it out,
or trying to black it out, and that is, I think that Lazio game was probably the most angry I was after a Champions League game for Celtic, primarily because Lazio were crap. But I'll tell you why I was so angry about it, because they got me again. Celtic got me. They got me again. We won the league last year, and we're all at Celtic Park, and we're all cheering, and they play the Champions League music, and the crowd go nuts. So they're geeing up for the Champions League months in advance, as if this is the thing. Look what we've won. We've won the league, and that gets us into the Champions League. Then they go into summer, they sign all these players, and we sign no. Speaking of individuals here, but take for example, take Kwon, right? You sign Kwon,
5-year deal,
5-year deal. Hashtag welcome Kwon. We do the photo shoot. We do the interview with Kwon. We do the interview with the manager.
They did a competition for a signed
we
shirt.
Do the competition.
Did you get that email?
They do a competition for a signed shirt. They do the hashtags. They do the graphics. You think we're onto something here. This guy's been treated like a major signing, and it was the same with all the signings. Then they sell the 3-match package. Then it's all the part about this is where Celtic belong. This is where we want to be. It's good to be back at this stage. Bollocks. The lot of it was bollocks. Yeah. Meanwhile, in Celtic Park, they're thinking, fuck, sold that to the mugs again. They believe it.
Yeah.
The Celtic board are, from me, from this time, I genuinely feel that they don't care about the Champions League. You know, sometimes you walk by a chippy and it'll be like that. Chip Shop of the Year 2016, and you don't know anything about that. It's just a badge to put on the front of the chip shop to sling out more fish. That's kind of what the Champions League is to Celtic. Champions League club these years in a row. Aye, but what did you do?
There actually is one in Clydebank. I won't name it, but it's a boat. that until recently had that on the side of it. It was Chip Shop of the Year, and then like that big massive letters. Then you look closer, it's runner up. Then even smaller, it's 2003. Right, okay.
Not only can we hardly win a game in the Champions League, but all the stuff that comes before it, the preparation the board need, and I hate, see this phrase, the board. Honestly, I wish I knew more about that. I wish there was like, Celtic produced a structure that had like Dermot Desmond up here, and then Michael Nicholson here, and then off the him there's wee shoot, and then this is response, because the board bad is becoming like that scene out of Family Guy where Lois Griffin just stands in front of the thing and goes 9/11, and everyone 9/11 was bad, right?
Yeah.
But so I've got nothing better to say, but the board don't put in the requisite work. They don't give the manager the tools to compete in this thing. So if you're not taking it seriously, don't trick us into taking it seriously. And that was my problem. We took it seriously. We believed Celtic when they did all that, when they signed all these crap players that are never going to make an impact in the Champions League. We believed them, we bought the package, we bought the strips, we believed that Celtic were going to try and do something, and then one tournament gone, and you think, fucking, they've fooled us again. They've pulled that same trick 2 years in a row.
Again? I know.
And all the stuff that Ange was talking about, I don't think Ange was lying, right? But when you look at Ange saying, we're gearing towards the Champions League, we need to build on this. The idea is we sell players at a higher level, which allows us to fund purchases at a higher level, which allows us to better be cope for the Champions League because the talent's there. And that just never happened either. That was last year's AGM. Ange said that we need to sell high so we can buy high, so we can increase the talent, so we can make a fist of the Champions League. That was just binned.
We kind of sold the players, but we just didn't brought any in.
We just didn't bother buying them. And I just feel like totally taking the piss out of with Celtic as far as the Champions League. I just feel totally taking the piss out of. And honestly, I'm verging on, if you're not going to be a Champions League club, Celtic, right? And that is to say you're going to go into the Champions League, but you're not actually trying to not win it. You're not actually trying to progress in it, because that there doesn't look like a team that was. And I know I've spoke for a long time. You might as well become something else. You might as well use all that money and give half of it to the charity foundation. I'm not being twee, but we're no using the money for anything else. So we might as well go and do some fucking good with it, because we might as well make a name for ourselves on the world stage, being more charitable, being more community focused, being more something else, because we are not a club, not a business that's trying to win football matches in the Champions League. It's a piss take.
For MD that wants to hear an astonishing rant on it, No, I used to see when somebody phones and somebody's shouting down the phone line, and you just put the phone down, you go, aye, aye, aye. That was me recording with Stephen after the game. He just went off on one, and I was just, yes, agreeing with everything he said. He just went off. It was beautiful.
This is our match reaction to the Lazio game. Immediately after, it was a 45-minute astonishing rant, as both the tabloids and the Melee have dubbed it.
I enjoyed it, thought it was cathartic. Then as soon as we stopped recording, I remembered what Celtic had done, and I was just raging again. I keep saying it, but it's unacceptable. For Celtic to be operating, in fact, for Celtic not to be operating at this level, it is just pure neglect. Celtic are a football club. Their aim is to win trophies and get into the Champions League. But that's where the aim stops. That is where the aim stops. And that buck stops with the board. They have no ambition at this club. They just want to win the league, and it's not good enough for us as fans. I grew up Celtic in Europe, Celtic in Europe, Celtic in Europe. They don't care about that. Or if they do, they're doing a really, really bad job. So which is it? You don't care about Europe, or you're doing a really bad job. Either way, it's not good enough.
It's the cliches that get me, and this has been a podcast about cliches, I suppose. So this is a good place to sort of bring it to. But it's all the marketing crap you get. Oh, these famous European nights under Celtic lights at Parkhead. It's not a thing.
No,
it's not. It's
been a thing for a decade.
There's people there like I've got a nephew. He loves going to Celtic. Goes every week. He's not seen Celtic. He's not been alive on one of these games. But he can rhyme off every Celtic player in the world, and he loves Joe Hart and all that. But he's never been alive to see any of this. So it's all just marketing crap that is shoved out. And it's all a bauble that Celtic like to hang on, and I'm sure they get invited to nice dinners and they go all around the world and yada yada yada. But as a serious club trying to do anything at all of note in this tournament, for me, the evidence so far just points to they are just no interested. They want to beat Rangers, win the league by a point, collect that Champions League money, and do fuck knows what, buy far too many players with it.
Well, far too many players. You can never have too many good players. Yes, you can. Yes, you can, Celtic. You can never have too many players rather than good players. Melly's right. I did have a bit of a tirade about it after the game, Lazio game, so I'm not going to go fully back into it. Don't have much more to add to what I said that night. But on the board thing, I think you're right to say that it's not worth anything to just say, oh, it's the board. The board are crap, right? I think it's our responsibility to explain why you think that, and you've done a very good job of it there. But you're welcome. And what I said on that podcast was that I boiled it down to an admittedly, possibly just childlike oversimplification of it. What I want my board of the club I support to be is to get the best players that we can afford on the pitch so we can enjoy the football and be as good as we possibly can at the highest level possible. Not the highest level, but the highest level possible for a club like Celtic. Are they doing that? No. Are they achieving that? Categorically, no. So that's my issue with the board, among many other things, but I have boiled it down to the very, very simple fact that if that is their primary or their main function as a board is to get the best football team that we can possibly afford on the pitch, they're failing at that. Is Yang the best right? Again, I don't like focusing too much on him, but he's the example of the week because of that performance. Is Yang the best right winger that Celtic can afford in the world? No. I'll wait. I'll leave a couple of seconds there for the viewers to say yes. It must be. No, he's not, and that goes for a number of positions. Greg Taylor is not the best left back that Celtic can afford, and I'm not saying spend 15 million on a left back, but is he the best that we can afford within the structure that we can't necessarily move from, that will keep us as a solvent business and all that? Is Greg Taylor the best? No, he's not. So you can make a number of these examples, but it is basically just not true across the board. So for that very, very admittedly overly simplified reason, the board aren't doing their job. And the reason that it sticks them across so much this season is because there was no qualification. Nope. Everyone knew we were qualifying for the Champions League from about, let's be generous, April onwards or something like that. So if Ange left in the very end, or very beginning of June, but there's no way that was a surprise. No. That would have been happening for weeks. So even at that, even if we give them to the absolute last minute, so the second Ange walks out the door and signs for Spurs, that's when your preparation kicks into gear. It's not, but I'm giving them the most rope here. What happened between that day in June and the first group stage game in August. What happened in between those to prove that we are geared towards being not only a Champions League club, but not a laughingstock in the Champions League? What did you do? What did you put in place in those weeks and months, given that it's your only job, is your primary function to drive this club towards the Champions League, because that's all you talk about, as you've already described? What did you do? What were the plans put in place? What was achieved and what was failed? Because to me, it seems like achieved nothing, failed everything, to be honest.
It's like, on you go, Miley.
Well, I was going to say, do you think when Ange Postecoglou walked out and Brendan Rodgers came in, the recruitment team, while they play slightly different styles of football, would have went, see all these guys, bin them, and then we'll find new ones for Brendan Rodgers? No, this is probably what Ange would have got served up as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, and if you give Ange that, well, he had Celtic, he was gunning for this Champions League, he wanted another attempt at it. The board had no reason not to give him the funds, no reason. What reason do you not have to give it to Brendan Rodgers? He's probably a manager of a bigger reputation coming back to the club. Maybe not as good a manager, but if this is what you're going to serve Ange Postecoglou and what you've served Brendan Rodgers, how's any manager going to progress Celtic?
And where's the vision? That's what you want to know. Where's the vision? And is it any wonder that players and managers come to Celtic for 2 years and feel like we've done it? Because there's no vision for Celtic. There's no vision from this board. I feel really let down. I feel that I've been ripped off. Do you know what I feel like? You know how every Christmas, these winter wonderlands spring up, and then inevitably there's a news story about one that's absolutely terrible, and it's a donkey in a car park. But everyone's already paid their £500 to go, and they go through the curtain, and there's a donkey in a car park with a couple of pallets and Santa sitting on the pallets. That's kind of what I feel like the Champions League is for Celtic. We all get hyped about it. We all buy our tickets to Champions League wonderland, and we go, and it's a fucking donkey in a car park. That's what the Champions League is for Celtic. And what annoys me the most is they can't even begin to put this wrong right until next August. So we have to win the league first and then get into the Champions League next August, and then we'll sign a couple of players, and then I'll get all hyped about it, and then Lord knows it'll probably be exactly the same.
That's a problem as well. Sorry, mate, but that's a problem because there's too much talk of, but the Champions League's going to be different next year, so you get more games and we'll get more revenue. We've not qualified for it yet, and because we've saddled Brendan Rodgers with all these crap players, that's in jeopardy. Now, Rangers aren't in any great shape either, right? But there's no way that we can be sitting here in December saying, well, we're basically guaranteed to walk into the Champions League next year and it'll be totally different. There's a fair chance that Celtic won't even be in it next year, and we'll be sitting talking about how that was the last time we ever qualified for the Champions League, because the coefficient will be on its arse in the next few years as well.
It's just far too not good enough from Celtic. And on that bombshell, thank you so much for watching. Thanks to everyone who listens. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/20minute-tims. You can get, at the very least, match reaction podcast for every game for less than the price of a Happy Meal per month. But we'll see you next week.